Dr. Elena had always felt more comfortable underwater than on land. The ocean was her sanctuary, her office, and her greatest teacher all rolled into one. For 12 years, she had been diving into the depths around Coral Bay, studying the mysterious creatures that called the deep waters home. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to discover. On that ordinary Tuesday morning in September, the research station where Elena worked sat right on the edge of the Pacific coast. It was a small facility, nothing fancy, but it had everything she needed to study marine life. The building was painted white with blue trim, and from her lab window, she could see the endless stretch of ocean that had captured her heart since childhood. Elena was 32 years old, with dark curly hair that she always kept tied back in a practical ponytail. She had kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and calloused hands from years of handling research equipment. Most people found her a bit quiet, but that was because she saved her energy for the work she loved most, understanding the secrets of the sea. That morning started like any other. Elena checked her diving equipment twice, as she always did. Safety was everything when you worked alone in the water. She had her wetsuit, oxygen tank, underwater camera, and sample collection bags. The weather was perfect, calm seas, and clear skies that promised excellent underwater visibility. Her mission was simple: collect water samples from the cave system about 2 miles offshore. These caves had always fascinated her because they seemed to go deeper than anyone had ever mapped. Local fishermen told stories about strange lights coming from the area at night. But Elena was a scientist. She believed in facts, not folklore. As she guided her small research boat toward the dive site, Elena felt the familiar excitement that came with every underwater expedition. The ocean was like a different planet, full of creatures and landscapes that most people would never see. Each dive was a chance to discover something new, to add another piece to the puzzle of marine life. The water was crystal clear that day, clearer than Elena had ever seen it. As she descended past the 30-foot mark, she could see the cave entrance below her like a dark mouth in the rocky seafloor. Schools of colorful fish swam around her, completely unbothered by her presence. A sea turtle glided past, its ancient eyes meeting hers for a moment before it continued on its way. Elena had been diving for 20 minutes when she first noticed something unusual. The water around the cave entrance seemed to shimmer differently, almost like it was alive with tiny sparkles of light. She had seen bioluminescent plankton before, but this was different. The light seemed to pulse with a rhythm, like a heartbeat. Curiosity got the better of her scientific caution. Elena swam closer to the cave entrance, her underwater camera ready to document whatever was causing the strange phenomenon. The opening was bigger than she had expected, easily large enough for a person to swim through comfortably. As she approached the cave, the shimmering light grew brighter. Elena checked her depth gauge. She was at 50 feet, well within safe limits. Her oxygen levels were good, and she felt completely in control. Everything seemed normal, except for that mysterious light dancing in the water around her. That's when she saw her. At first, Elena thought it was just a trick of the light, maybe a large fish or a piece of floating kelp. But as her eyes adjusted to the dim cave entrance, she realized she was looking at something impossible. There, suspended in the water like she belonged there, was a figure that looked almost human. The being was tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Her hair flowed around her like liquid silver, and when she moved, it was with a fluid elegance that no human could ever achieve underwater. But it was her eyes that took Elena's breath away. They were the deep blue-green of the ocean itself, ancient and knowing, for a moment that felt like forever. The two beings simply stared at each other. Elena's scientific mind was racing, trying to categorize and understand what she was seeing. But her heart was doing something completely different. She felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling of recognition that made no logical sense. The being's lips curved into what might have been a smile. She raised one hand in a gesture that seemed almost like a greeting, and Elena found herself responding automatically, lifting her own hand in return. The moment their eyes met, Elena felt something shift inside her, like a door opening in her mind that she never knew existed. Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, the mysterious being turned and glided deeper into the cave, moving with incredible speed and grace. Elena started to follow, but something held her back. Her training kicked in. Never dive alone into unknown caves. Always have a safety plan. Never take unnecessary risks. But as she watched the glowing figure disappear into the darkness, Elena felt a pull unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't just curiosity, though that was certainly part of it. It was something deeper, more personal. She felt like she was letting go of something precious, something that might never come back. Elena surfaced slowly, following all the proper decompression protocols, but her mind was spinning. Back on her boat, she sat in the warm sunshine and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Had she really seen what she thought she had seen? Was it possible that there were intelligent beings living in the ocean depths? Beings that had never been discovered by science? The rational part of her mind suggested other explanations. Maybe she had experienced nitrogen narcosis, a condition that could cause hallucinations in deep water. Maybe the strange light and the isolation had played tricks on her perception. Maybe she had simply seen a large fish or marine mammal and her imagination had filled in the rest. But Elena knew what she had seen, and more importantly, she knew what she had felt. That moment of connection, that sense of recognition, was as real as anything she had ever experienced. Whatever that being was, wherever she had come from, Elena knew with absolute certainty that their paths were meant to cross as she drove her boat back to shore. Elena made a decision that would change her life forever. She was going back to those caves. She was going to find answers to the questions that were now burning in her mind, and maybe, just maybe, she would see those incredible ocean blue eyes again. The sun was setting as Elena tied up her boat at the dock, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. But she barely noticed the beautiful evening. Her thoughts were already on tomorrow, on the next dive, on the possibility of another encounter with the mysterious being who had appeared in her life. Like a vision from the depths of the sea. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that graceful figure suspended in the blue-green water. Saw those ancient eyes looking into hers with an intelligence that seemed to understand her in ways she didn't even understand herself. Whatever was happening to her, whatever this meant, Elena knew there was no going back. She had seen something that would change everything she thought she knew about the ocean and her place in it. 3 sleepless nights passed before Elena could no longer resist the pull of the ocean. She had tried to focus on her regular work, analyzing water samples and writing reports. But her mind kept wandering back to those cave depths every time she looked at the ocean from her lab window. She felt that same strange tugging sensation in her chest, like something was calling to her from beneath the waves. On Thursday morning, Elena loaded her boat with extra equipment. This time, she brought underwater lights, a longer air supply, and a waterproof notebook. If she was going to have another encounter with the mysterious being, she wanted to be prepared to document everything properly. The scientist in her demanded evidence. Even if her heart already knew the truth, the weather was perfect again, almost suspiciously so. The ocean stretched out like a sheet of green glass, so calm that Elena could see her own reflection in the water. As she approached the dive site, she noticed something different. The water around the cave entrance seemed to be glowing even. From the surface, a soft blue-green light that pulsed gently like a beacon. Elena suited up carefully, double-checking every piece of equipment. Her hands were shaking slightly, though she couldn't tell if it was from excitement or nerves. As she slipped into the water, she felt an immediate sense of rightness, like she was coming home after a long journey. The descent felt different this time. The water seemed warmer, more welcoming. Schools of fish swam alongside her as if escorting her down, and she could have sworn she heard something like music in the water around her. Not real music, but a kind of rhythm that seemed to match. Her heart beat when Elena reached the cave entrance. She wasn't surprised to find the being waiting for her. She was floating near the rocky opening, her silver hair moving in the current like liquid mercury. Today, Elena could see her more clearly. Her skin had a pearl-like quality that seemed to shift between pale green and soft blue. She was wearing something that looked like flowing fabric, but it moved like it was part of her body. This time, the being didn't flee when Elena approached. Instead, she smiled a welcome that needed no words. She gestured for Elena to follow her into the cave. And without hesitation, Elena did. The cave was nothing like Elena had expected. Instead of a dark, cramped tunnel, it opened into a vast underwater chamber filled with the most beautiful light she had ever seen. The walls were covered in what looked like living crystals that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, plants that couldn't exist in any biology textbook swayed in the gentle current, their leaves glowing with soft colors. But it was the being herself that truly amazed Elena. Here, in her own environment, she moved with such grace and purpose that Elena felt like she was watching a master artist at work. Every gesture was fluid and meaningful, every movement perfectly suited to the underwater world. The being approached Elena slowly, her ocean blue eyes never leaving Elena's face. When she was close enough to touch, she did something that changed everything. She reached out and placed her hand gently on Elena's forehead, just above her diving mask. The moment their skin made contact, Elena's world exploded into sensation and understanding. Suddenly, she could hear the being's thoughts, feel her emotions, understand her intentions. It wasn't telepathy in the way science fiction movies portrayed it. It was more like remembering something she had always known, but had forgotten. The being's name was Kaya, and she was indeed from a species that had lived in the ocean depths for thousands of years. They called themselves the Thalassans, which meant children of the sea in their ancient language. They had watched human civilization develop from their hidden cities in the deepest trenches, but had never made contact because they feared what humans might do to their peaceful world. Through their connection, Kaya showed Elena images of Thalassan society. They lived in beautiful underwater cities made of grown coral and shaped stone, places where art and science blended together in ways that human minds could barely comprehend. Their technology was biological, their energy came from the ocean itself, and their culture was based on harmony with the sea and all its creatures. But Elena learned something else, something that both thrilled and terrified her. The Thalassans formed deep bonds with others of their kind, connections that went far beyond simple friendship or love. These bonds were actually necessary for their survival, allowing them to share life, energy, and emotional strength. When a Thalassan found their true bondmate, the connection became permanent and essential to both beings' health and happiness. Kaya's touch was warm and gentle, but Elena could feel something changing inside her as they maintained contact. It was like a door opening in her mind, letting in light and understanding that she had never known existed. She could feel Kaya's loneliness, her curiosity about the surface world, her hope that maybe, finally, she had found someone who could understand her people. Elena realized with growing amazement that she was beginning to understand the Thalassan language, not through her ears but through some deeper part of her mind. Kaya was teaching her without words, sharing knowledge directly through their connection. It was the most intimate form of communication Elena had ever experienced. As the minutes passed, Elena found herself changing in other ways too. Her need for air seemed to be lessening. Though she still needed her breathing apparatus, her vision was becoming clearer underwater, and she could sense the movements of fish and other sea creatures around her with an awareness that felt almost supernatural. Kaya explained, through their shared consciousness, that the bonding process had already begun. From the moment they first saw each other, their life forces had started to connect. Elena's human biology was slowly adapting to allow for the deeper connection that Thalassan bonding required. The revelation should have frightened Elena, but instead, she felt a sense of completion that she had never experienced before. All her life, she had felt like something was missing, like she was searching for a place where she truly belonged. Now, floating in this magical underwater chamber, with Kaya's hand still touching her forehead, Elena understood what she had been looking for. Time seemed to stop as they shared thoughts, memories, and emotions. Elena showed Kaya her life on the surface, her work, her love for the ocean, her loneliness in a world that often seemed too harsh and fast-paced. Kaya shared her own experiences, her centuries of life in the deep ocean, her people's wisdom, about living in harmony with nature. When they finally broke the connection, Elena felt like she was waking up from the most beautiful dream of her life. But she knew it wasn't a dream. The warmth in her chest, the clarity in her mind, the sense of belonging she felt, all of it was real. Kaya smiled at her with such tenderness that Elena felt tears forming behind her diving mask. Through gestures and the fragments of Thalessan, language that Elena was beginning to understand, Kaya explained that this was just the beginning. The bonding process would continue and deepen over time, but only if Elena chose to let it happen. Elena looked around the glowing cave chamber, at the impossible beauty of this hidden world, at the being who had already become more important to her than anyone she had ever known. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Her heart had already decided. As Elena prepared to surface, Kai gave her a small gift, a piece of what looked like living coral, that glowed with soft blue light. Through their connection, Elena understood that it would help her find her way back to this place, and that it would help her body continue adapting to the changes that were already taking place within her. Swimming back to the surface, Elena felt like she was carrying a wonderful secret. She had found something that scientists had only dreamed of, proof that intelligent life existed in Earth's oceans. But more than that, she had found a connection that made her feel truly alive for the first time in her life. Elena's life changed completely over the next few weeks. The small piece of living coral that Kaya had given her sat on her bedside table, glowing softly in the darkness like a nightlight. But it was more than just a beautiful gift, it was a connection to the world beneath the waves. And Elena could feel its gentle pulse matching her own heartbeat. The first changes were subtle. Elena found herself needing less sleep, waking up naturally after just 4 or 5 hours feeling completely refreshed. Her dreams were filled with visions of underwater cities and strange, beautiful creatures that she had never seen before. Sometimes she would wake up with the taste of salt water in her mouth, even though she hadn't been diving in days. Her colleague Dr. Rivers was the first to notice something different about Elena. They had worked together at the research station for 3 years, and he knew her habits well. During their morning coffee routine, he commented on how much more energetic she seemed lately. "You're glowing," he said with a laugh, not knowing how close to the truth he was. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up. You look 10 years younger." Elena smiled and changed the subject, but she couldn't ignore the fact that her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked different too. Her skin had a subtle luminescence that seemed to come from within, and her eyes were brighter, more vibrant than they had ever been. When she looked closely, she could swear she saw tiny flecks of sea green in her brown irises. The changes weren't just physical. Elena's connection to the ocean was becoming strong every day. She could sense the tides from inside her laboratory, feel the movement of large schools of fish offshore, and predict weather patterns with an accuracy that amazed her colleagues. Her research work was becoming more intuitive, as if she was understanding the ocean from the inside rather than just observing it from the surface. But it was her growing need to be near water that really concerned Elena. She found herself taking long walks on the beach during her lunch breaks, standing in the surf until her shoes were soaked. The feeling of ocean water on her skin was like medicine, soothing an ache she couldn't quite name. On days when she couldn't get to the beach, she would fill her bathtub with salt water and lie in it for hours, feeling her body relax in ways that regular water couldn't provide. 2 weeks after her second encounter with Kaya, Elena made her third trip to the underwater cave. This time, she barely needed to navigate. Her body seemed to know the way, pulling her toward the dive site like a compass needle pointing north. The living coral in her equipment bag pulsed more brightly as she approached the familiar waters. Kaya was waiting for her, as Elena had somehow known she would be. But this time, she wasn't alone. 3 other thalassans floated in the crystal-clear water around the cave entrance. Their forms graceful and curious, Elena felt a moment of nervousness. But Kaya's presence was calming, and she could sense through their growing connection that these beings meant no harm. The other thalassans were as beautiful as Kaya, but each was unique. One had hair like spun gold that caught the underwater light. Another had skin with patterns that shifted like living tattoos, and the third seemed to be older, with silver markings that Elena somehow understood indicated wisdom and experience through the connection she shared with Kaya. Elena learned that these were members of Kaya's family group, not family in the human sense, but beings who had formed deep bonds with each other over the centuries. They had come to see the surface dweller who had captured their sister's heart, and to determine whether Elena was truly compatible with their way of life. The examination wasn't frightening or invasive. Instead, it felt like being welcomed into a warm embrace. Each thalassan touched Elena gently, sharing a brief connection that allowed them to understand her intentions and character. Elena felt their approval wash over her, like a gentle tide, and she understood that she had been accepted into their community. But with acceptance came responsibility. The older thalassan, whose name Elena learned was Nerian, showed her visions of what the deepening bond with Kaya would mean. Elena saw herself changing further, adapting to life both above and below the waves. She would gain abilities that no human had ever possessed, but she would also lose some of her purely human nature. The transformation process was irreversible once it reached a certain point. Elena was approaching that threshold, and soon she would have to make a choice, return to her completely human life, and break the growing bond with Kaya, or surrender to the changes and become something new, something that belonged to both worlds. As Elena floated in the underwater chamber, surrounded by beings who had become like family to her, she felt the weight of this decision. Her scientific mind understood the implications. She was documenting the discovery of a lifetime, but she was also becoming part of that discovery in ways that would make it impossible to share with the surface world. The bond with Kaya was affecting her in ways that went beyond the physical changes. Elena found herself understanding concepts that had no words in human language. The way ocean currents carried messages between distant thalassan communities. The songs that whales sang to honor the deep-sea dwellers, the ancient agreements between surface and depth that had kept the peace for millennia. When Elena returned to the surface that day, she brought with her a new understanding of her place in the world. She wasn't just a scientist studying the ocean anymore. She was becoming a bridge between two worlds, a guardian of secrets that could change everything humans thought they knew about their planet. But the transformation was becoming harder to hide. Dr. Rivers noticed that Elena could hold her breath for impossible lengths of time. During their equipment tests, the janitor mentioned that he often saw lights in Elena's lab late at night, even though she insisted she went home at normal hours. Elena's landlord called to ask why her water bill had tripled in the past month. The most challenging part was the emotional changes. Elena's feelings for Kaya had grown beyond simple attraction or even love as humans understood it. It was a connection that touched every part of her being, a bond that made her feel complete in ways she had never imagined possible. But with that completeness came a profound loneliness when they were apart. Elena began to understand why the thalassans needed their bonds to survive. The connection wasn't just emotional, it was literally life-sustaining. Without regular contact with Kaya, Elena felt like she was slowly fading, like a plant deprived of sunlight. Her human relationships felt shallow and distant compared to the deep understanding she shared with the beings of the sea. 3 weeks into her transformation, Elena made a discovery that changed everything. While reviewing her research notes, she noticed patterns in the data that she had never seen before. Ocean temperatures, current flows, and marine migration patterns were all shifting in ways that suggested the ocean itself was responding to some kind of disturbance. Through her connection with Kaya, Elena learned the truth. The thalassan communities were in danger. Changes in the deep ocean, caused by human activity on the surface, were threatening their ancient cities and disrupting the delicate balance that had kept their civilization hidden for thousands of years. The revelation hit Elena like a physical blow. She had found the love of her life and a community that had accepted her completely. But that same community was facing an existential threat, the bond that was transforming her into something new. was also making her responsible for protecting a world that most humans didn't even know existed. As Elena sat in her laboratory that evening, watching the living coral pulse with gentle light, she realized that her transformation wasn't just about personal choice anymore. It was about becoming the guardian that two worlds needed. Someone who could understand both the surface and the depths. Someone who could protect the delicate balance between human progress and oceanic preservation. The weight of this responsibility was overwhelming, but Elena also felt a sense of purpose that she had never experienced before. She was changing into something that had never existed before, a being who belonged to both worlds, who could love and protect them both. The question was no longer whether she would complete the transformation, but whether she would be strong enough to handle everything that came with it. The morning that changed everything started like any other, but Elena could feel something different in the air. The living coral on her nightstand was pulsing faster than usual, and she woke up with a sense of urgency that she couldn't explain. As she got ready for work, she noticed her reflection looked more otherworldly than ever. Her skin had a pearl-like glow, and her eyes now held definite flecks of ocean blue. At the research station, Dr. Rivers was waiting for her with a concerned expression. "Elena, we need to talk," he said, closing the door to her laboratory behind him. "I've been getting some unusual calls about you." Elena's heart sank. She had tried so hard to keep her transformation hidden, but she knew it was becoming impossible. "What kind of calls?" she asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. "Government people," Rivers said quietly. "They're asking questions about your research patterns, your dive logs, the unusual readings from your equipment. They want to know why you've been spending so much time in that particular area of the ocean." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She had been so focused on her connection with Kaya and her own transformation that she hadn't considered how her activities might look to outside observers. Her frequent dives to the same location, her extended underwater times, her increasingly accurate predictions about ocean conditions, it all painted a picture that was bound to attract attention. "There's more," Rivers continued. "They're sending a team here tomorrow. They want to review all your research data and interview you about your findings. Elena, if you've discovered something important out there, something that could affect national security or scientific understanding, you need to tell me now." Elena's mind raced. She thought about the beautiful underwater cities, the gentle Thalessan people who had accepted her as family, the ancient secrets that they had trusted her with. The idea of government agents discovering their world, of scientists and military personnel invading their peaceful realm, made her feel sick. "I need some time to think," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can you give me until tomorrow morning?" Rivers nodded, but his expression remained worried. "Elena, whatever you're involved in, be careful. These people don't seem like they're going to take no for an answer." After Rivers left, Elena sat alone in her laboratory, staring at the ocean through her window. The water looked different to her now, not just a body of water to be studied, but a living world full of beings she had come to love. She could sense Kaya's presence somewhere out there, could feel the anxiety and concern flowing through there. Elena made a decision that would have seemed impossible just a few weeks ago. She gathered her most important research files, the ones that contain any references to the cave system or unusual readings from that area. Working quickly, she deleted files from her computer and shredded papers, destroying any evidence that might lead the government team to Kaya's world. As she worked, Elena felt the living coral in her pocket growing warmer. It was reacting to her distress, trying to comfort her in its own way. She realized that her transformation had progressed further than she had thought. She was becoming sensitive to the emotional states of Thalessan artifacts, just as she was becoming sensitive to the ocean itself. That evening, Elena made what she knew would be her last dive as a purely human being. She loaded her boat with enough equipment for an extended underwater stay, knowing that she might not be coming back to her old life. The sun was setting as she reached the dive site, painting the water in shades of gold and crimson. Kaya was waiting for her at the cave entrance, But Elena could see immediately that something was wrong. The normally graceful Thalison seemed agitated, her movements quick and nervous. Through their bond, Elena felt waves of fear and urgency. In the underwater chamber, Elena learned the full scope of the crisis. The government attention wasn't just coincidental. Somehow, they had detected the energy signatures from the Thalison cities. Military sonar was disrupting the delicate balance of the deep ocean communities, and there were reports of surface vessels using new technology to map the ocean floor. In unprecedented detail, Nerian, the elder Thalison, was there along with several others Elena hadn't met before. Through their shared consciousness, Elena understood that they were leaders from different communities, all facing the same threat. Humanity's expansion into the deep ocean was no longer just an environmental concern. It was an existential threat to the Thalison way of life. The assembled Thalisons had reached a difficult decision. They were preparing to relocate their cities to even deeper waters, places where human technology couldn't reach them. But such a move would be devastating to their culture, cutting them off from the surface world they had watched over for millennia. Elena felt the weight of their trust. As they shared this information with her, she was the only surface dweller who knew about their existence, the only one who could potentially help them navigate this crisis. But helping them would require her to complete her transformation. To become fully committed to their world, Kaya swam close to Elena, her beautiful eyes filled with both love and sorrow. Through their bond, Elena felt the depth of Kaya's feelings, her love for Elena, her fear of losing her guilt about the choice she was being forced to make. Kaya had never wanted to put Elena in this position, but the crisis had made it unavoidable. The choice Elena faced was starker than she had imagined. She could return to the surface, break her bond with Kaya, and try to resume her human life. The government agents would question her, but without evidence, they would eventually move on. Elena would be safe, but she would also be alone forever, knowing that she had abandoned the beings who had shown her a love deeper than anything she had ever imagined. Or she could complete her transformation, become the bridge between worlds that the Thalisons needed. She could help them protect their civilization, but she would have to leave her human life behind completely. There would be no going back, no way to explain her disappearance to the people who cared about her. As Elena floated in the glowing chamber, surrounded by beings who had become more important to her than her own life, she thought about everything she would be giving up. Her career, her apartment, her human relationships, everything that had defined her identity for 32 years. But she also thought about what she would be gaining. A love that transcended species, a purpose that went beyond personal ambition, a chance to be part of something greater than herself. The bond with Kaya had already changed her in ways that made her old life feel small and empty. How could she go back to studying the ocean from the outside when she had experienced what it was like to be part of it? The decision, when it came, felt inevitable. Elena reached out to Kaya, taking her hands in a gesture that sealed their bond permanently. She felt the final transformation begin immediately, a warm tingling that spread through her entire body. Her DNA was rewriting itself, adapting to allow her to survive in both worlds. But even as Elena made her choice, she knew that the real challenges were just beginning. The government agents would be looking for her, and her disappearance would only make them more suspicious. She had to find a way to protect the Thalison world while also protecting the human world from the consequences of discovering it. As the transformation completed, Elena felt herself becoming something new, not human, not Thalison, but something that could exist in both worlds. She was scared, excited, and filled with a sense of purpose that she had never experienced before. The old Elena was gone, and in her place was a guardian who would do whatever it took to protect the love and the world she had chosen. The future was uncertain, but Elena knew she would face it with Kaya by her side, ready to defend the delicate balance between surface and sea. The choice had been made, and there was no going back. Elena's transformation was complete, and her real journey was just beginning. 6 months had passed since Elena made her choice, and the world had never looked more beautiful to her. She floated in the warm waters of the hidden sanctuary that had become her new home, watching the sunrise paint the ocean surface in shades of gold and pink. Her transformation was complete now, and she could move between the surface world and the depths with an ease that still amazed her. The sanctuary was a marvel of Thalison engineering, a protected cove, hidden among rocky islands, where the water was shallow enough for surface breathing but deep enough to hide their activities from passing boats. Elena had helped design it, using her knowledge of human technology to create a place where the two worlds could safely meet. Elena's body had adapted in ways that seemed impossible by human standards. Her lungs could process oxygen from both air and water. Her skin could regulate temperature in the coldest ocean depths, and her eyes could see clearly in conditions that would leave a human blind. But the most remarkable change was in her mind. She could now communicate directly with any Thalison through the bond network that connected their entire species. Kaya swam up beside her, her movements as graceful as ever, even after all this time. Elena's heart still skipped a beat when she saw her bondmate. Their connection had deepened into something that went beyond love as humans understood it. They shared thoughts, emotions, and even physical sensations. Elena had never felt so complete, so perfectly matched with another being. Through their bond, Elena felt Kaya's contentment and joy. The crisis that had forced Elena's transformation had been resolved, but not in the way anyone had expected. Instead of hiding deeper in the ocean, the Thalison communities had begun working with Elena to find ways to coexist with human activity. Elena had become something unique, a translator between worlds, someone who could understand both human ambition and Thalison wisdom. She spent her days helping negotiate agreements that neither side fully understood, but both were willing to honor. Shipping lanes were quietly rerouted to avoid sensitive areas. Ocean research was guided away from Thalison territories. Marine protected areas were established with carefully crafted explanations that satisfied human environmental concerns, while actually serving to protect ancient underwater cities. The work was challenging but incredibly rewarding. Elena had found a purpose that used all of her skills, her scientific training, her love of the ocean, and her growing understanding of Thalison culture. She was making a difference in ways that her old life as a simple researcher never could have achieved. Dr. Rivers had been the hardest person to leave behind. Elena had left him a letter explaining that she was pursuing a research opportunity that would take her away for an extended period. She knew he worried about her, but she also knew that keeping him in the dark was the kindest thing she could do. Some secrets were too dangerous to share, even with people you cared about. Elena's transformation had given her abilities that seemed magical, but were actually based on advanced biological science that the Thalisons had perfected over millennia. She could process information at incredible speeds. Her memory had become nearly perfect, and her intuition about ocean conditions was so accurate that she could predict weather patterns days in advance. But the most precious gift of her transformation was her relationship with Kaya. Their bond had evolved into something that was both deeply personal and cosmically connected. They shared not just their present experiences, but their memories, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. Elena had access to centuries of Thalison history through Kaya's mind, while Kaya could experience the rapid, passionate intensity of human emotion through Elena's memories. The bond had also connected Elena to the larger Thalison community. She could feel the contentment of the deep-sea cities, the joy of young Thalisons learning to communicate with sea creatures, the wisdom of elders who had lived for centuries. She was part of something vast and ancient, a civilization that had learned to live in perfect harmony with the ocean. Elena's days were filled with work that felt more like play. She would spend mornings on the surface, using solar-powered equipment to monitor ocean conditions and communicate with human research stations. Her reports were always accurate, but she was careful to provide information that would help protect the environment without revealing the true source of her knowledge. In the afternoons, she would dive to the Thalison cities where she worked with architects and engineers to design systems that could adapt to changing ocean conditions. The Thalisons had incredible knowledge about working with natural forces. but they had limited understanding of human technology. Elena's unique perspective allowed her to bridge that gap, creating solutions that neither species could have developed alone. Evenings were for her personal life with Kaya. They would swim together through coral gardens that glow with bioluminescent beauty, or float in the warm shallows, watching the stars reflect on the water's surface. Sometimes they would visit other bonded pairs, sharing meals and stories that helped strengthen the community. Bonds that were so important to thalassine society. Elena had also discovered that she was not entirely unique. Throughout history, there had been other humans who had formed bonds with thalassines, though never under circumstances quite like hers. These individuals had become guardians and protectors, working quietly to maintain the balance between the surface and the depths. Elena was part of a tradition that stretched back thousands of years, a secret society of beings who belonged to both worlds. The responsibility was enormous, but Elena had never felt more capable of handling it. Her transformation had given her not just new abilities, but a new perspective on what was truly important. The competitive, isolated life she had lived as a human seemed small and limiting compared to the connected, purposeful existence she now enjoyed. One evening, as Elena and Kaya floated together in their favorite spot near the sanctuary, Elena reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. A year ago, she had been a lonely scientist studying the ocean from the outside. Now she was a guardian of two worlds, bonded to a being who understood her better than she understood herself. The future stretched ahead of them, full of challenges and opportunities. Climate change was affecting the ocean in ways that would require careful management. Human technology was advancing rapidly, creating new threats and new possibilities. The thalassine civilization was slowly adapting to a world where hiding was no longer completely possible. But Elena faced these challenges with confidence and joy. She had found her true purpose, her perfect partner, and her place in the world. The bond with Kaya had transformed her from a solitary researcher into a guardian of the deep, someone who could protect and nurture the delicate relationship between surface and sea. As the stars reflected on the calm water around them, Elena felt the deep contentment that came from knowing she was exactly where she belonged. Her transformation was complete, her bond with Kaya was forever, and her work as a bridge between worlds was just beginning. The ocean that had always been her sanctuary had become her home in ways she had never imagined possible. Elena had found her species, her purpose, and her love, and she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the strength that came from being truly, completely connected to the world around her. The girl who had once studied the ocean from the outside had become a woman who protected it from within, bound forever to the depths and to the love that had transformed her life completely.